When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers.
Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Nonprofit U, a forum where nonprofit stakeholders can share lessons learned and discuss the latest developments in the industry. My name is Valerie, Leonard, your host. I'm a consultant to nonprofits, and I specialize in community and organizational development. I work with nonprofit organizations to help them make a stronger impact to their clients and communities. You can find Nonprofit U on Facebook and Twitter, and I encourage you to comment early and often the Chicago way. Use the hashtags NonprofitU, Fathers for the Future, or Investing in Fathers. You can also leave comments on blogtalkradio.com/nonprofit_U. The chat room is open, and you can post comments and questions. In order to use the chat room, you must open a listener-only account, and you will find a link to open the account on the episode page. You can also email me questions at consulting@valeriefleonard.com or send messages through Facebook and Twitter. You'll find a Nonprofit U fan page on Facebook, and the Twitter account is @NonprofitU. We'll be taking questions by phone and from our chat room at about the 20-minute mark. The call-in number is 347-884-8121. Again, that number is area code 347-884-8121. Today's episode is Investing in Fathers. We'll talk about the importance of equipping young fathers with the tools they need to be better providers and role models for their children. We'll also talk about money management strategies, mentoring, job creation, and networking. Again, we encourage you to call in with questions and participate in live chats at about the 20-minute mark. The call-in number is 347-884-8121. Nonprofit professionals, educators, and community stakeholders, especially men, are especially encouraged to call in and share your stories. We're not trying to discriminate against ladies, but I would really, really like to hear from men on this topic. Our guest for today is J. Michael Carr. He's the founder and executive director of Fathers for the Future. J. Michael is a native of Chicago and grew up on the city's south side. He earned a master's degree in accounting and a master's in business administration with a concentration in nonprofit management from Roosevelt University. He's been a financial analyst for the Chicago Municipal Employees Credit Union, the controller at Gustafson Shields, an advertising agency, a business manager of enrollment at DePaul University, a grants manager at Rotary International, and a field auditor at American National Bank, and most recently he served as the interim director of finance and administration of Alternatives, Inc., a major nonprofit serving Chicago's at-risk youth. So thanks for being on the Nonprofit U show today, Michael. It's indeed an honor to have you. Sure.
Thank you, Valerie, and welcome to all your listeners.
Thank you. We see that you have significant work in financial management. I want to ask you, what led you to transition from financial manager to become an executive director of an organization that focuses on men and their families and financial empowerment?
Well, good question. Sometimes I ask that question to myself. Fathers for the Future, we help fathers manage their money to provide for their families. I've been in the financial industry now for 25 years. I'm an accountant by trade. However, in 2002, I was working on a doctorate in economics at DePaul University when I was diagnosed with stage 2 testicular cancer. I celebrated 13 years of remission last August. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. My life has been a series of health challenges after that, though. through a medical accident shortly after my bout with cancer, I contracted necrotizing fasciitis, which many don't know is the flesh-eating bacteria disease from that outpatient surgery. And that put me in a coma for 9 days, paralyzed for 2 months, and a year and a half learning how to walk and eat again. Needless to say, that had a major impact on our family's finances. My wife, Carr, and I celebrated 20 years of marriage last October, and we have 3 teenagers. Thank you very much. Thank you. And during that period of time, there was 1 month where finances were so tight, Carr had to go to our food pantry in South Shore, St. Philip Neri, to feed our family for a week. And even now, after 6 major surgeries, I suffer from critical illness polyneuropathy, which is a chronic illness with similar symptoms to multiple sclerosis. So I founded Fathers for the Future based on seeing and feeling through my own experiences a need to help young fathers navigate personal financial management. And as a father, I know what it's like to have his wife come to him and say the kids are hungry. But after the utilities have been paid and the rent and the health insurance, there's really no money left over for food. So I know how a man can feel ashamed as a father and as a parent. I've lost my self-worth, and it took me a long period to get it back. I believe in financially empowering fathers because they're the head of the household and will equip them to become better to manage the financial challenges of a daily basis. Your listeners might be asking, how does someone with an MBA and a background in accounting find themselves in financial trouble? Well, with our family, it was due to job loss, hospital bills, student loans. But most families, especially in marginalized communities, are really just 2 paychecks away from being homeless. And these are the fathers and the families we target to help.
Wow. I thank you so much for sharing that. And what I like about your story is, the fact that you're leading and you're not leading someplace where you haven't been. So I think that's really, really powerful.
It does make a difference when you walk the walk and you talk the talk. It doesn't become as preachy. Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like if anyone can deliver this message and deliver the message on point, I'm the spokesman for that population. I've seen both sides.
Yes. You're the poster child, and when I say that, I mean that in a positive way.
Of course.
Have really beat the odds, and I thank you again for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So, I was reading a blog that was prepared by LaJune Montgomery Tabor, and she's the CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in Battle Creek, Michigan. And she noted that research from the Altarum Institute makes the business case for racial equity. She says that if we can close income and employability gaps between white workers and workers of color, we would see a $2 trillion increase to the U.S. economy each year and GDP growth, that's the gross domestic product, of $5 trillion by 2030. I think that's pretty powerful. So what do you see as some of the most effective ways to address income disparity between black families and the mainstream?
Well, first of all, I believe that Ms. Tabron is correct. Income disparity in the United States is really out of control. But it's not just in the United States. Unfortunately, it's all over the world. And even though black and brown people are now the majority of the world's population, we suffer the most from poverty and poverty-related illnesses. Closing employability gaps should be a primary tactic for the economics approach if you want to take a macroeconomics approach. But usually that's going to have to be done through some type of legislation. And it's not going to be an easy endeavor because legislation takes a long time to see results, sometimes as many as 10 years. And unfortunately, people are suffering right now. Many people need help like yesterday. There are some stats I have here from Chicago Families on Family Asset Counts, project of the Corporation for Enterprise Development. And even though the city of Chicago has 45% home ownership rate, 1 in 3 families are asset poor, meaning they lack sufficient net worth to subsist at any poverty level for 3 months in the absence of income, like what happened with us. 16% of Chicago families do not have a savings or a checking account. This is twice the national rate. And then 25% of the Chicago families have a bank account but still use check cashing or payday loan stores. Our approach to address this issue at Fathers for the Future happens at a micro level. We approach it from talking to the families, talking to the fathers. The best way to close the income gap by truly creating long and short-term wealth is through education. We specifically focus on financial education. So how do you create short and long-term wealth? First, by making better financial decisions. We want fathers to learn financial discipline through social and emotional learning. So before a father buys a pair of $250 gym shoes for his 12-year-old son, he needs to understand the implications of that purchase on all the factors of his family's life.
Yes,
so
it
will it affect the inability to pay the light bill, which might be due in a couple of days. It might have the lights turned off, which is consequently going to have a bigger impact on the family's finances. So looking at those type of issues first. And then I want to talk about community. You know, I think families need to take a personal responsibility for the financial health of their own communities. If we as a black people do not invest in our community, how do we expect outsiders to invest in them? South Shore is currently a food desert. A lot of the businesses have left, but we need to invest in ourselves. I believe the family is the nucleus of the community. And we suffer from a lack of financial education compared to other communities. The dollar circulates almost 10 times within the Jewish community before it reaches the outside. The dollar circulates almost 6 times within the Asian community before it reaches the outside. The dollar circulates an infinite number of times within white communities, more than any other group. However, sadly, in the African American community, the dollar does not even circulate one time within its own community. As a matter of fact, the black dollar only stays in the black community less than 6 hours.
Wow. And you know what? When you said that, I thought about Webb Evans, the late Webb Evans. Were you one of his protégés?
Could you repeat yourself?
Huh?
I'm sorry, Val. Could you repeat that?
Okay, I thought about the late Webb Evans, and I was just wondering if you were one of his followers. Because,
no.
Okay. Yeah, and Webb Evans was the one who created the Buy in Black campaign here in Chicago, and that was his legacy when he died not too long ago. So, as you were talking,
I'm very familiar with his work, but I was not a formal student. However, many of the people that I consider to be mentors, Henry English, rest in peace, Otis Monroe from the Monroe Foundation, Mark Allen from Black Wall Street, they all preach and teach this type of, self-determination around black communities. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I was looking at a 2014 poll of African Americans, and this poll was conducted by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and Ebony Magazine, and they found, at least on a national level, that while the people who responded were generally satisfied with their own quality of living, they still believe that we have a long way to go in other areas. For example, 74% think that society isn't doing enough to support young men and boys of color. Almost 2/3 say that they're better off financially than they were 5 years ago, but 82% are concerned that whites still make more than blacks for doing the same job. So, again, that income disparity. And then they found that almost 1/3 are concerned that their children are not getting a quality education, and I'm pretty sure if we drill down to local communities in Chicago, I know I feel that in North Lawndale, And we say that 74% or 74% say that efforts to reduce crime and violence in their neighborhood is losing ground or staying the same. And I would imagine if this poll were taken today, that number would be higher, because crime is indeed higher today than it was 2 years ago in some communities. And then 30% said that improving and creating more jobs and making good-paying jobs is a top issue of concern. In fact, I'm surprised that it was only 30%. But I guess in your experience, and you kind of touched on it, what are some of the other concerns facing African-American men in particular, in your opinion?
Well, overall, I think poverty is the biggest concern. Poverty is big business, and developing money pitfalls and scams to take advantage of those meager incomes is, my opinion, despicable. I attended Marmion Military Academy for high school, which is an affluent boarding school in Aurora, Illinois. I was one out of 4 African Americans of a population of 365, roughly.
Wow.
Give or take a year. And I spent a great deal of my youth in and around middle to high income communities, predominantly Caucasian. I got to tell you, I never saw liquor stores or currency exchanges or payday loan stores in these communities. All of our 3 children have attended or are attending schools here in Chicago. Even though these schools were good by Chicago standards, they weren't as good as schools that are in the Barrington, Illinois community or in Naperville, which their residents are willing to pay higher taxes for a better quality of school. Poverty really impacts race relations and even down to what a person eats and how he eats. It affects the daily decisions and opportunities afforded them. To answer your question directly, 4 months ago, I attended Money Smart Week. It was the leadership conference at the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago. Money Smart Week happens in April every year to promote financial literacy throughout the nation. So during the lunch presentation from one of the financial institutions, the presenter said that their ideal client for a savings product was age 45 to 55 years old, male, working, and Caucasian. Now that kind of pissed me off. Even though I am 45 and working, I'm not Caucasian. But what about all of the men who do not fit this profile at all? Fathers for the Future, we work with low to moderate income fathers who've just been released from prison or are transitioning from housing. I can tell you the last thing on their mind is a 401k or a retirement plan.
Right.
They're worried about their utilities being shut off, right, Val? Right. Besides Bernie Sanders, where's the national dialogue about the working poor? How do we educate families on managing their money? How do we help them make their dollars stretch in these desperate times? So the number one factor, I think, for black men specifically is learning how to better manage their money.
And that's a pretty lofty goal, and I think is worthy and very important. And I just want to let people know that you're listening to Nonprofit U. We have J. Michael Carr. He's the founder and executive director of Fathers for the Future on the line, and he's sharing some very interesting information about blacks, particularly men in poverty, and we'll talk about some ways we can begin to address those in our next set of questions. If you have any questions in the chat room, feel free to type them in, and I can share them. And within about, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes, we can open it up for questions from our audience. So, again, thanks, J. Michael. We want to talk about your program now. We know that Fathers for the Future provides a set of workshops on money management. Can you give us an overview of what the workshops cover, who facilitates the workshops, and who typically attends them, and all that good stuff?
Sure. Our Power of Money Management course is 6 weeks. We have a unique focus on better decision-making strictly for men. Unfortunately, it's kind of a boys' club. We don't necessarily allow women to be in those meetings and in those courses. It changes the dynamic greatly if you have the opposite sex talking about money. Money is a very sensitive topic. It triggers a lot of emotions, sometimes good, but for the most part bad. It can be an addictive part of a personality. And so we try to separate a discussion by zeroing in and drilling down on just the needs that men have around money and their understanding of money. We marry parenting and personal finances. Our pedagogy is different than the typical financial literacy class taught by most banks. As a previous banker, I can totally understand a bank's mindset. They want deposits. They want to make money. But our program teaches about choices long before products and services are ever introduced. Because once you understand how to make more prudent choices, then you can talk about a savings account or a checking account or terminology. But we really focus on understanding the why. The why is the most important part of our course. And a father's why should be to provide for his family. What parent doesn't want to be a good provider? So the course usually covers usual financial topics such as budgeting, credit building, and investments, but through a very restorative lens. Our model for operations is we have a push model rather than a pull model, which means that we don't have fathers coming in off the street into our class. We partner with what I like to call father-friendly companies or other nonprofits that serve the population that we're trying to hit. Many times they can be in workforce development, transitional housing, or serving ex-offenders, but that group between pretty much 16-year-old to 40-year-old men that are fathers are typically what we seek out.
Oh, okay, great. You know what? I see that we have a caller on the line. I'm going to see if he or she would be willing to speak. I see caller with phone number area code 630-450-1993, and he or she has logged off. I'm assuming he or she did not want to speak.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. No, hi, Valerie. It's Shelby.
Oh, you. Hey, I'm good. Okay, I saw where the whole time was 0. I thought I lost you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
How are you?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I just wanted to let you know that Marcus Tabb, who we grew up with, is also listening. And for folks who don't know, Marcus Tabb is a pastor of a church on the north side, and he's listening in on these conversations so that he can better understand community development and be a better pastor. So this is like a quarter reunion. We went to quarter. So I'm sorry about that, J. Michael.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so Shelby, you had a question?
Yes, I do a lot of work with financial literacy and in our communities, and I've always been looking for solutions, and it's nice to see that there are others who are engaging in such activities. And one of the things that I look at, and it's really been really popular now that the new pair of Air Jordans are out, because I use that as a great example of some of the things that are wrong in our community, and that we tend to want to wear and show our wealth or lack thereof, as opposed to creating savings accounts. And so part of it is I feel that there's a mindset in our community that's okay. And so my question would be, how do you change that mindset? What things have you done to find that you have found effective in changing the mindsets of these young men to have them thinking on a different path in terms of financial literacy and the develop saving strategies? I won't even call it wealth building, but more just saving strategy.
Well, Shelby, I would like to say thank you for your question. First, deliberate, just consistency. That messaging has to be peppered throughout the program. And want to give you an example of what happened to me about 3 weeks ago. I was facilitating a course, and one of the gentlemen, when I brought up the $250 gym shoe issue, he said, well, you know, that's why I went to jail, is because I didn't have $250, so I went out because my son asked for these shoes, and I got him those shoes. So I spent some time in prison because he stole it. Now, the problem was that he still didn't see anything wrong with what he did. So the bigger issue of rehabilitation not working is there too, but when we tried to confront him about it, he just did not see an error in his ways. He said if he was fitted, his shorty was going to be fitted. So regardless of whatever someone told him, this was embedded in his mind. He told me that it was pretty much he had grown up almost living from car to car, not from living apartment to apartment, house to house, but him and his family kind of grew up living from car to car in different locations, and sleeping in the car, mind you. So he never had. So there was a shame that he had acquired over these past years, that he just was determined that his children were not going to have the same deficiencies in his eyes that he had. So when we opened it up to the class, of course, they saw my point of view, and we tried to convince him that he was wrong in his thought process, but he just wasn't going to change. He was 29 years old, so maybe it was a situation of he needed a few more hard knocks, or he needed to spend a longer period of time in prison. I don't know what the case or what was going to make him change. And at one point, you have to say you can do so much. But to answer your question, you just have to be consistent with your messaging. Eventually, they understand. You know, it takes you can't change a person's entire life within 6 weeks. Everybody has their own baggage. So you have to plant the seeds that make them make better choices. And eventually, when confronted with a decision to make, they'll make the right one.
My second question. My second question would be, you know, there are a lot of, and I label it, as I call them, wealth bandits that are like, you know, just ensconced in the black community. And one example I use is the strip of Ashland Avenue, where there's a Rent-A-Center next to a Jackson Hewitt, next to a currency exchange, next to an Aaron's Rental Furniture. And and I say this is something that's, you know, that just really depicts what's wrong in our community, and that, you know, there are a lot of organizations, companies that are like really, you know, picking, shall I say, on people who are already in poverty, and giving them the idea that they can, you know, have better things, and it's just, you know, they just cost you $30 a week or whatever they advertise. And so has there ever been a push to make these organizations more accountable for the things they do in the community?
Yes, there has been legislation that's been worked on from several levels, from local level all the way down to all the way up to the state level, to actually monitor what would kind of be seen in most communities as predators, payday loan stores, auto loan stores, just how they can operate. There hasn't been a lot of success with that because they have a very big lobby. They have a lot of money. So it's really up to a lot of the community leaders to educate their community about why they shouldn't pay 151% on a payday loan. Why don't you go to a bank and get a traditional relationship where you can actually apply for a loan? The problem is that most of their typical clients, most of us, most people in these neighborhoods don't have the credit scores, or they have problems with check systems. So these alternatives, by going to payday loan places or currency exchanges, they are the only alternatives left for survival.
Right.
And then, Shelby, can you share some of the work that you do? I know you work with Sunshine Gospel Enterprises, and your focus is working with entrepreneurs. And I know you don't just focus on men only, but, you know, I would imagine some of the work that you do would, help men to create wealth and hopefully change some habits that might keep us in poverty.
Yeah, and I think part of our big part of our program, well, you know, the basis of our program is to help people who are living, you know, struggling communities to build wealth and build self-sufficiency through owning their own business. And one of the things that, over the years that I've been doing this at other organizations, is that financial literacy becomes a very strong component of it, because it's like there's no point in making $100,000 a year if you don't know how to spend $100,000 a year. And I find that that programs are really necessary to teach these individuals, and I would say men have it worse than women. in terms of my experience about how their attitudes towards spending money. I find that most of the women that come to our program are in better financial position, have better credit scores than the men. And it just seems like they don't focus on the African American men don't focus on that as much as the women do. But I think that's also because women tend to be household leaders in our communities as well, so it's much more important for them to be that way. And a quick comment, because I live in Naperville, and something that you said touched me in terms of like the schools and property taxes, and I laugh at people who live in the city who complain about high property taxes. And I say if I ever sent someone my property tax bill who lives in the city, they would never, ever complain again. But when you turn around, most of our money goes to our school system. I think about 70% of our property tax money goes to our school system. And so and I think that's really a great step in building a community, is having great schools. And sometimes people just don't understand the importance of the property taxes if they're being spent for the right things.
Well, that's excellent. J. Michael, did you have a comment to Shelby's comment?
No, I agree with him completely. In fact, I'm glad that he acknowledged the property tax issue. That's it.
Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. I thought you got cut off. Yeah, in Chicago, the property taxes for schools, about 60% go to schools, 59, 60%. So it's a big differential in Chicago versus Naperville, and I guess the results bear out, right, with the kids.
Well, I think a good example is like on a $200,000 house. The property taxes in Chicago are roughly $3,500, $4,000 based on the last property tax bills I've seen. That same property in Naperville, similarly priced, would have an $8,000 property tax bill. So there's much more, almost double the property taxes, and so that's even more money going towards the school system. So even if it's so even if it's 60-70%, it's still it's double the amount, because the tax rates are much higher. So and that's one of the things that it's hard for people to wrap their minds around, is that sometimes you have to give up a little to get to.
So that delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me that you and J. Michael should have some conversations after this show, because I'm listening to what you offer and what J. Michael offers, and I could really hear the potential for a good partnership.
Oh, I agree. I was listening to you, and I was like, you're hitting a lot of the touch points that I've been preaching for a long time, and it's always it's refreshing to hear someone talk the same language and have that understanding, because a lot of times it just falls upon deaf ears.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
So, Valerie, you have my information, right? You can shoot them off my email address.
Yes,
and,
I will definitely. Okay.
I would love to connect with you one day soon. We can sit down and have a discussion.
I would love to, too.
Cool.
This is perfect
All right,
timing.
guys. Well, I have to go to a meeting. It was lovely talking and listening. And, J. Michael, I really appreciate you taking your time out to share that with Valerie and the audience. It was really good information.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you, too, Shelby.
All right, same here. Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, so on that note, J. Michael, you can tell us a little bit about your father's fellowship network, because as I listened to you talk about the need to change mindsets and the fact that you can't really change mindsets in 6 weeks, I would imagine that your father's fellowship network may help out in that area a little bit, you think?
Yes, it does. The fellowship network grew from an idea of creating an alumni network, basically because eventually we would like to build this out into some type of larger educational institution for fathers. And so the Fathers Fellowship Network is a support group. It's an opportunity for the fathers that have come through our program that found it very manageable and necessary to understanding their own personal finances and how those personal finances bleed into other areas of their lives, whether it's the relationship with their children, their relationship with their wife or girlfriend, because none of these decisions, financial decisions, don't happen in a silo. They usually happen at some level as a family discernment. They're talking about these around the dinner table or in the car or something around that nature. So the network came to be because a lot of the fathers wanted to keep coming back after the class. So we said, I know, it was a very good experience. We had our board conducted a focus group last year, and the number one need that the fathers had was that after the class was over, they felt like there was no support group to make sure that they were on task for managing their money, that they were hitting all their budget requirements, they were looking at tracking their spending. So they developed a group within themselves that said, okay, we're going to do this on our own. And that's what the network is. I'm involved in the network as kind of an oversight, but the network manages itself. It has an elected chairman that they conduct meetings, and they operate continuously on their own. I'm really there more as a consultant.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
They
choose their own projects that they want to talk about and their own projects that they seek funding for, and then they implement that project.
That is excellent. I'm just doing a time check. We are over time. It's about 2:38. Typically the show is over at 2:30. Do you have a few minutes? I want to respect your time. I say that after we already passed the time, right? Let's see if you could stay just a little bit longer, because there are a couple questions I want to ask.
Sure.
Okay. So what are some of the program outcomes and your success stories? And that, to me, the fellowship already sounds like a tremendous success.
Well,
okay,
in 2014, well, we were founded in 2005, so we've had some start and stops with some of my health challenges along the way. So we really didn't start programming solidly until 2014. With everything considered, it was about 2013 we started laying the groundwork again, and by 2014 we were programming again. So since 2014, we've graduated 121 fathers. 98% of those fathers have been non-custodial. Less than 1% have had an ongoing relationship with any financial institution In fact, truth be told, we had a bank day in 2014, and we had 40 fathers come out to open up checking accounts. And by the time they had all been checked out for going through check systems, only about 4 of them qualified for being able to get checking accounts. So it's a tough population that you're working with. All of them, all the fathers have had credit scores below 450, and none of them, even currently, have any saving instruments. So I always like to think of Robert when I was teaching, and I still occasionally teach. I love teaching. I think that's really where my heart is at, not doing the administrative stuff, but actually getting up and being an instructor. One of the fathers in our program, 32 years old, we'll call him Robert, working 2 jobs, sleeping on his friend's couch, and the mother of his children and his 2 daughters were at home. Every week we have a task where you have to track your spending. And each week, and we were into about the 5th week of the course at this point, he was coming up about $200 short every week. Every week.
Oh, wow.
He was frustrated. That's a lot of money. He was frustrated. I was frustrated. And at one point he says, "Mr. Carr, I just need to go out here and smoke this square." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, Robert. I'm looking here at your budget and your expenses, and nowhere does it talk about any type of cigarettes. So how much are you smoking on a weekly basis, and how much are the cigarettes?" And when we factored in not only cigarettes, which are $10 a pack,
wow.
we added in liquor, entertainment, everything like that. It came out to be about $175 a week that he was spending just on fun.
Wow. So that was the differential.
That was the differential. That was the variance right there. So that December, I ran into Robert doing a follow-up, had him come to the office. I was actually not here, but when I ran into him, he says, "Mr. Carr, tomorrow is Friday, and I got to tell you, for the first time ever, I have $50 in my bank account, and I don't have to go to my mother for bus fare to get back and forth to work."
Wow.
And to me, that's a success story.
I love that. That's incremental change. All right. Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. I want to let folks know that they're listening to Nonprofit U, and our guest is J. Michael Carr. He's the Executive Director and founder of Fathers for the Future. If you have any questions before we close, please let me know. If you're in the chat room, you can type out your question. If you are listening, you can give us a call before we wrap up. Okay, you do have an event coming up in April, the Fatherhood Resource Fair and Dad's Cafe, J. Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about the event and who's going to be there, who should come, and all that good stuff?
Sure. Actually, we have 2 events. You just know about the first one because I haven't put anything out about the second one. I'll talk about that at the end. The first event, the Fatherhood Resource Fair, is based out of a newly formed alliance. It's called the Illinois Fatherhood Alliance, and that's a sponsored project of Fathers for the Future because we're a 501c3. It's a coalition of other fatherhood organizations and government agencies, such as DCFS is our biggest partner, Metropolitan Family Services, and we've worked with the Safer Foundation, Be Strong Families, Family Focus, all of the larger nonprofits. They're all part of this coalition where we wanted to truly come up with an organization that was about investing in fathers. So this event has tables for service providers. That's what makes the Alliance a little bit different than just regular nonprofits, because regular nonprofits provide their own services and then they have their own client base. This is an idea behind DCFS to connect fathers that need resources to the resources that they don't even know exist. So we all have service providers in employment, in healthcare, in parenting education, child support services, child support rights, financial education. This is actually a one of a lifetime kind of event. I've never seen anything like this, but it's really designed to connect fathers to these resources. And because it's Illinois and DCFS has that type of reach, this will be the first one in Chicago. Then we're planning another one down in Springfield, one in East St. Louis, and then one in Rockford. This event will take place, the Fatherhood Resource Fair and Dad's Cafe will take place on April 8th at Metropolitan Family Services, located at 235 East 103rd Street in Chicago, Illinois. The Honorable Cook County Commissioner Richard R. Boykin will be our keynote speaker. Commissioner Boykin has a penchant for parenting and totally understands his role in preventing violence, so we're thankful to have him come out. And then the next day, we talked about the Fathers Fellowship Network. They are having an event. It's workshops to teach fathers who are getting ready to be garnished for child support how to prepare their own petitions. To take, it's a very grassroots project. It's going to happen right in South Shore, right here. And we have partnership with the Illinois Department of Children and Child Welfare Services will be on hand. So all of the fathers that are in our program have experienced some problem with paying child support. So we're not advocating that fathers do not pay child support. The purpose of the workshop is to help fathers learn the process of child support, from learning the petitioning forms, what their rights are, and being able to budget to make those payments on time. So those are the two events that we have coming up. One is April 8th and one is April 9th.
Oh, that is awesome. And make sure you send me the information for the second event. I have information from the first event, and we can share it in our networks. And before we go, and before we go, there was from the chat room from Reverend Marcus Tabb. He wanted to know when do the men meet, when and where, and how do they get to be a part of the program? How do they sign up for the program?
They can go through our website. I would like to have Reverend Task either give me a call or call the office. Yeah, because what we do is we customize the workshops, the financial management workshops, because we go on site. So it's up to them to actually pull the fathers together. The process is they have about 15 fathers that they know will benefit from having our workshop. They pull the fathers together. We'll go on site and teach them right there at their site.
Okay, awesome. That is great stuff. So we have come to the end of our show, and I'd like to thank J. Michael Carr. He's the founder and executive director of Fathers for the Future, for being a guest today. J. Michael, would you care to share any parting thoughts and tell us how we can reach you?
Well, thank you, Valerie, for letting me come on Nonprofit U, and thank you all listeners that actually sat around and gave up some of your afternoon to hear what I had to say. I really do believe that when you invest in a father, you invest in that family, and you invest ultimately in the future of the community. So if you like what you've heard and you want to learn a little bit more about us, you can visit our website, which is www.fathersforthefuture.org. We have 2 events coming up, and I'll let you know about those events by posting something on our Facebook page and our Twitter. Always feel free to call our office, which is 773-966-7444.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. So I want to thank everyone for listening to Nonprofit U Blog Radio Talk Show today. The show will be available for download within about an hour. Be sure to tune in next week for another information-packed show, and I'm looking forward to yet another lively discussion. And until then, take care of the nonprofit in you. And again, thanks again, J. Michael, and I will talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.
When we go out to eat, we never agree on where to go.
I want burgers. Pizza.
Tacos it is.
The one thing we do agree on is we all want unlimited high-speed data. That's why we switched to Metro PCS.
Stop by Metro PCS with the whole family and get 4 lines with unlimited LTE data for just $100, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out.
Coverage not available in some areas. Offers require port and of number not currently active on T-Mobile network. During congestion, the fraction of customers using more than 35 gigs per month may notice reduced speeds. Video streams at up to 40p. No tethering. See store for details and terms and conditions.